Real Estate Talk, where we discuss issues affecting real estate and housing development in Nigeria and Africa at large. We also talk about issues affecting tenants, landlords, how to buy a property, how to sell a property, how to, value a property for the reason of taxation and otherwise. My name is Int'l, and this is Real Estate Talk on PLTVC. Today we'll be looking at tenants' ignorance of laws that can protect them. Already there are laws that have been enacted that could protect tenants, and how can these tenants use these laws to their advantage? Today with me in the studio is Mr. Justice Onyebule. Mr. Justice Onyebule works with Club 9 Estate Management Limited. Club 9, they are into property management and a whole lot of things. And he's here today to tell us from his years of experience. It's true that he's not a lawyer, but with his years of experience, a basket full of experience, he has come across tenants, landlords with different issues. So he's here with us to discuss tenants' ignorance of laws that can protect them. We are glad to have you. So please, tell us, what are these laws that tenants are ignorant of?
Yes, like you rightly said, being a property manager, we have come to see that in most instances, considerations are given more to the landlords than to the tenants, which is not supposed to be the case. Because as a property manager, you are supposed to have the interest of both the tenants and the landlord, which means that you educate your landlord the legal implications of evicting a tenant wrongfully, because the tenant has a law under the Nigeria that protects him. That's the tenancy law.
And a lot of tenants are not aware that they have this law that will protect them.
They are not. And that is why they fall victims to unlawful eviction. So just like you rightly said, these are some of the things we'll be discussing or we'll be enlightening the public today about those laws that protect them. First, under the tenancy law, two kinds of tenants are recognized. We have the contractual tenants and the statutory tenants. Now, the contractual tenants are those tenants who are there by contract. They sign a tenancy agreement for a particular period of time, either for 1 year or for 2 years, as the case may be, or more than that.
Now, possibly these people who, like, let's say, people who contractors, they come into the community and they say, okay, we are going to stay for a particular length of time. Okay, these are the kind of people you mean?
No, that's like leasing.
Okay.
Those ones are also included.
Okay.
But like for you and I, who would want to rent a property, and we meet a landlord, and the landlord gives us an agreement.
Okay.
Now there's a written agreement stipulating that he recognizes me as his tenant. He still has his protection under the law to still be residing in the property. And when we talk about these statutory tenants, we have tenants at will, and then we have the severance tenants. But yes, our law recognizes more of the tenants at will. Now, this tenant at will is someone who, yes, has the contract with the landlord. His tenancy has expired. But because he is not in the property illegally, he is still allowed to stay in that property. So he is now staying at the will of the landlord, because the landlord is aware of him being in the property, whereas his tenancy has expired. Yes, but if we're talking about the severance, this is someone who comes into a property without the know of the landlord. So he's illegally inhabiting the property. So you see, in that instance, this severance is not really put into context in our law, because ordinarily you can't stay in one's property without consent. Yes. So that tenant at will, it's more like recognized or given consideration under the tenancy law.
Yeah, well, this happened in Abuja. There's a property where people just moved in. People just moved in and they've been staying there for years. Until one day, the owner of the property, decided to come pay a visit and noticed that people were staying in his property. So yes, I think there could be circumstances where this law could stand. But let's go back to this contractual tenant. We call them contractual tenant, yeah. Right? Now, what if the landlord, presents them with
A tenant agreement.
Agreement, fine.
Yeah.
You give them an agreement, and they don't agree to all the content of the agreement. What happens in that case?
Yeah, you know, for a contract to stand, there must be an offer, there must be an acceptance, then consideration. So if there is an offer and he doesn't accept, there can be a counter offer. Okay, I don't like this term, can it be changed? Then the landlord looks into it. Is it okay to be changed? Good and fine. He can erase that and change it. There must be a position for acceptance, where the landlord and the tenant are in acceptance of the documents, and then they can affix their signatures and names. It's the reason why it's always advised that a tenant should go through that paper, the tenancy agreement, because it's a contract you're signing, else you shoot yourself on the foot.
Beautiful. So now let us see some laws that could protect the tenants now, that could be maybe included or not included in that tenancy agreement.
Yes, like when we talk about some unlawful acts that have been perpetrated by landlords toward ignorant tenants. The first of it is inadequate eviction. Now this is where tenants are physically thrown out of the properties, or they are threatened, they are even assaulted, just because they are unable to renew their rent. Now, it is wrong on the part of the landlord or the property manager, because every tenant has a right that is protecting him. Only the court has the right to evict a tenant. So even if his rent has expired, due processes must be taken, which is applying to the court for eviction. Now, the court will also give room to the tenant to explain himself if he's guilty or not of the accusation. Have he renewed his rent or he has not? And why he doesn't want to renew his rent, or the problem he has. That is why we now have processes like the case will be mentioned, then there will be hearing where the both parties would actually explain themselves in respect to either the report or the other party who is being reported against. Now there will be cross-examination, and at the end of this, that the witnesses will be presented, the judge will listen, and at the end he will give his judgment, either for the tenant to be evicted or for the tenant to be given some consideration of time so that he can pay his rent.
Okay, fine. Before we get into the next issue with respect to tenants' ignorance of the laws that will protect them, let's go for a quick break. We'll be back. Please don't touch the dial. You're welcome back from that short break. It's wonderful to have you back. Like we said earlier, we were talking about laws that could protect the tenants. These are laws that tenants do not really know about. That's why here in the studio we have a property manager from Cloud9 Estate Management Limited, Mr. Justice Onyebule. He's here to tell us these laws that are already in existence and how tenants could take advantage of these laws to survive. You're welcome back from the break. Yes, you've discussed the inadequate eviction or illegal eviction now. Now tell us more about laws that tenants could actually, take advantage of.
Yeah, so like in that instance, the tenant can sue the landlord.
When he gives illegal
When,
notice,
no,
quick notice.
yeah, when he actually evicts him
Wrongly.
wrongly. Yes, he can actually sue the landlord. In short, even after the judgment, if the tenant feels that the judgment was not given rightly, he can appeal.
Okay, now let
That's
us
because of
understand
the
what
law
is
that
this
protects
illegal eviction, because I'm a tenant. Let's see. So what is illegal, eviction?
Yeah, it's like I've said, when the landlord takes the law into his hands,
And
not going
evicts
to the courts
and drives me out of
yeah,
the
and
house.
drives you out,
Okay.
or kicks you off, yeah, or threatens you with either maybe he's a military man, he threatens you with the military,
Yeah.
that you should forcefully leave his apartment without the law taking its course.
That's after my rent has expired.
After your rent has expired.
So it means I still have rights even after my rent has expired.
The law, the tenancy law protects
me.
you. Yes, the tenancy law protects you as a tenant who have signed a contract with the landlord. But as we continue, we'll also see some other caveats that are there. Like the second point there is inadequate notice to quit. Now, there have always been this confusion between tenants and landlords in respect to the duration given for notices. Why many tenants have the notion that they must be given 6 months notice, they fail to recognize that there are laws, there are different kinds of tenants, and there are different duration. For example, a tenant who pays 6 months is only allowed, a tenant who pays for 6 months is given 3 months notice.
Okay.
Yeah, a tenant who pays for 1 year is allowed to 6 months notice to quit. Now, this is supposed to be if the landlord, for example, you're a landlord and you're a tenant, and while staying in your property, you notice that I'm not making good use of your property. Now, you can decide to serve me 6 months notice because I'm a yearly tenant. But
or perhaps I want to use the property for something else.
Yes, or perhaps want to use the property for something else. But if I am a half-yearly tenant, that is, I pay for 6 months, I'm entitled to 3 months notice. Yes.
So what happens after the expiration of the 3 months?
Good. Now, when your rent has expired, you are no longer a contractual tenant with the landlord. You become a tenant at will.
At his will.
At his will. If you have failed to renew your rent, you are entitled to 7 days or 1 week notice. That is where most tenants don't get it clear. So at that point, your rent has expired on the 31st of August. You've not renewed your rent that first. You've not renewed your rent on the 1st of September, 2nd of September. A landlord can go to the court and then serve you with a notice to quit for 7 days. After that 7 days, the landlord also will now come with a 7 days owner's intention to take possession.
Okay.
Which after that owner's intention to take possession, the landlord will now apply for a writ of summons for the court to ask you to come to court so that they will hear you and know why you have not left his property. So these are the cases. It's not in all cases that the tenant should expect that I must be given 6 months before I leave my property when your rent has expired.
Okay, so it means that when my rent has not expired, you can now serve me 6 months notice if
Yes.
I am a yearly tenant.
Yes,
When
once
my
your
rent
rent
has
has
not
not expired, you're entitled to 6 months notice as a yearly tenant. But as soon as your rent expires, you're a tenant at will because that contract term has elapsed. It's only when you renew your rent that the contractor terms and conditions continues.
So I hope you're listening, those of us who are tenants, that these laws, we should really understand them so that it is not that after your rent has expired, you're expecting the landlord to give you 6 months notice. And when he doesn't do that, you say you want to go and call a lawyer. Okay, now, so what are other laws that could protect the tenant?
Yeah, interference with tenants' privacy. The fact that the landlord thinks that this is my property, so I can bug in any time, I can do anything now to do in the property. No. Once the tenant has paid his rent, he is entitled to the quiet enjoyment of that property without you bulging into his privacy. Even if you have work to do in the property, it's ideal that the landlord or the property manager seeks the consent of the tenant. Mr. Justice or Mrs. Esther, I would like to take up a maintenance service in the property. Can I come at so time? Now the tenant, that will enable the tenant to actually put one or two things in order so that you can come in and take, so you can't just barge into the tenant's privacy. It's very wrong. The tenant has a right to sue the landlord if he does that for barging into his privacy.
So why are we saying this? It is, one, the tenant is entitled to an agreement. So the tenant is also entitled to go through the agreement and accept or not accept. Is it not so?
Yes.
Fine.
And it's also noteworthy that landlords should not want to manage their properties themselves or look for caretakers, like the case may be. They should look for professional property managers. Every professional property manager have his agreement penned down by a lawyer who knows the legal implications of taking some certain actions. And because of that, they will protect both the landlord's right and the tenant's right in the tenancy agreement. So it's always best that properties are given to professional property managers so that they manage these properties. It goes a long way to save the landlord headache, unnecessary headache, and also protect the tenants from wolves.
Okay, now let's look at another scenario. One where the landlord expects the tenant to do some major repairs. For example, you're moving into an apartment or into a property and it needs screeding, and the landlord says, okay, you're going to handle the screeding, and at the end of the year, before you leave this property, I'll have to make sure that everything is exactly the way you met it. So if the property needs to be, repainted, you have to do that. How about those clauses in the tenancy agreement?
Yeah, the thing is this: every landlord or every property manager makes sure that the property he's giving out is in a habitable condition to the tenants. That is what is looked out at. So the property must be in a habitable condition, which means that there is nothing that would cause risk to the life of the tenant in the property. Like you're talking of grading now, this preferential. The landlord can decide to say, no, I'll just paint the wall. You can reside in it. Or I'm not going to tile the floor. It's going to be floored. You can use your rug or your carpet. It's not going to have any effect on the tenant. But when we now talk about the roof is leaking, there are electrical circuit breakage, those things can cause harm to the tenants. So in that case, it is expected that the property manager looks into this and makes sure that the property is in a habitable condition so that there is no risk that will be brought upon to the tenant that is inhabiting the property.
Okay, fine. Now, let's say, in your final words, what are you going to tell tenants who are ignorant of the existence of laws that could protect them?
Yes. He who asks questions never gets lost, like is always said. So tenants should always seek the advice of lawyers or professional managers. Then landlords should always see that they give their properties to professional managers to manage for them. And then we also employ property managers to also seek the expertise of these lawyers. Let them draft these tenancy agreements for them so that what is written down as a contractual agreement is something that is going to benefit both the landlord and the tenants. This will go far to help both the tenants and the landlord to have an exquisite habitable condition, and it will go a long way also to make sure that the relationship between these two are cordial. Because once there is breakage in relationship, that's why you start seeing litigations always coming up between the landlords and the tenants.
Thank you very, very much. That was from Mr. Justice Onyebule. Mr. Justice Onyebule is a manager at Cloud 9 Estate Management Limited. Am I right?
Very true.
Fine. So you've heard all of that. So you can always, if you're a tenant or your landlord, it is important to make sure as a landlord you hand over your property to the care of an estate manager. And if you are a tenant and you're looking for a property, pass through the estate managers so that they can protect you, from the wolves out there. Well, you can reach us on 0803 4122 813 for any advert placement, or you want to sponsor the program. We will always be available. You can also follow us on Twitter, Real Estate Talk 360. You can also like our page on Facebook, Real Estate Talk 360. When you follow us, we'll be glad to follow you in return. So far, so good. I am Omini Ita. I am saying have a lovely day ahead of you, and always watch Prayer TVC, and do not forget to watch Real Estate Talk, where we enlighten and educate you on matters affecting tenants, landlord, real estate, property, buying and selling, and so much more. Have a lovely day.